Time doesn't erase murder. It just hides it better. They said the case was closed. They said no one was watching. But someone always is. This is Santana True Crime.
Welcome to Santana True Crime. Tonight, we are going to give an update on the Mica Miller case. For those that are not aware, the first show that we ever did on YouTube is actually Mica Miller. So we've been looking for some closure in that case. I was hoping that her ex-husband, JP Miller, would get charged. And recently, as in last week, a federal court just indicted him for cyberstalking as well as lying to the FBI. So he's looking at 7 years, 5 for the cyberstalking, 2 for the lying to the federal authorities. And so hopefully he will get convicted in court. But I wanted to start off with why this case got so much attention. A friend of mine reached out to me after I started podcasting and told me about this case. She lived at the time in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, which is where this case originated. And there was a lot of rumors going around that her husband had murdered her. And from being an outsider, it sounded very cut and dry. There was a 911 call released where she openly tells a 911 communicator that she is going to commit suicide. There's also video footage of her throughout that day. No one's seen around. We covered all that in detail, but I do want to play that 911 tape for you because I think that that's kind of the start of this investigation. All right, so this is a 911 call. We know that she left her apartment that day. That's captured on a Ring doorbell. She then goes to a gas station. I believe she buys a drink and fills up her car, which those type of things just seem really odd if you're going to commit suicide. Like, why are you going through all this trouble? And then the next stop she makes is she goes to a gun store and actually buys a Sig Sauer pistol, which she ends up using. And again, you can see her in the store by herself. No one appears to be around her. I mean, she's waiting for the background check to go through to purchase a gun. And then she drives to Robeson County in North Carolina. And that's where she ends up making this phone call to 911.
Robeson County 911, what's the address of your emergency?
Hi, are you able to trace the location of my phone?
Let me see. You don't know where you're at?
In National Park.
What's the phone number you're calling me from? Where's the park located at?
So she seems pretty calm. She doesn't seem to be in distress. I think that it is very odd that, or telling, that she not only asked the 911 dispatcher to essentially ping her location, is what people commonly refer to it as. But I think that she's doing that to make sure that her family is able to find her remains, which really shows of what type of mental state she's in right now.
In Fair Bluff.
Let's see.
I have my location on, I think, on my phone. Find my phone is on. I just did my my location.
Okay, I'm showing, hold on one second.
So they used to use a program called Phase 2, which is essentially for emergency purposes. They're able to get your GPS coordinates from your phone. And that doesn't happen very quickly, but you can tell that dispatch is working on that.
I don't think you are in Robeson County. At the Lumber River State Park. In
Yeah, that's where I am.
Okay. Tell me what's happened.
I'm about to kill myself, and I just want my family to know where to find me.
Okay, ma'am. Just listen to what I'm saying, okay? Let me make sure I got the exact location where you're at, okay? Just 1 minute.
So she ends up committing suicide by using the pistol that she purchased on herself, and she is found. But what's really odd is when Robeson County, the sheriff's department, has the case since it occurred in their jurisdiction, and that's in North Carolina. And they did a thorough investigation, in my opinion. They found out where JP was. They were able to work with Myrtle Beach to get the surveillance footage from, the areas that she had been that day. So her apartment had the ring footage, again, the convenience store, as well as the gun shop, all had cameras and clear footage of her going in. There wasn't any question in their eyes that this was anything more than a suicide. But it got interesting when you read the press release from the Robeson County Sheriff, because he acknowledged all these things, that a timeline essentially of her day. And then he made a note where he said that he offered to get a statement, or he requested a statement from JP Miller, her ex-husband, and that he had denied it because he did not want to go into North Carolina for whatever reason. But then the sheriff put something at the very end that caught my attention. He said that even though JP was, and I'm paraphrasing here, but even though JP Miller is not a suspect in this investigation, he acknowledged that he called it a parallel investigation with the FBI. We know that JP met Mica when she was only 10 years old. And JP at the time was a pastor at a church. And so he groomed her from a very young age. So after that statement, a lot of people speculated that the rumors were true and that they hoped that JP would eventually get charged, because they believed that even though he did not murder Mica, clearly she committed suicide, he still should hold some moral responsibility for her mental health status, and that there's only so much people can take. And Mica had definitely taken a lot of abuse throughout the years. And I think it's very clear when you look at the totality of the evidence that JP Miller definitely affected her mental health for the worst. And this was not a short term occurrence. This is something that happened over decades. And when we're looking at their relationship, Micah reported that the grooming started at 10 years old and continued all the way up until they got married, which she was 21 or 22 years old. He was 17 years older than her at the time. So, when she's 10, he's 27. And there's reports by the family that it especially became more inappropriate as she got older and into her teenage years. So we know that they separated on January 2023, and by early 2024, there are multiple police contacts. And what I mean by that is that I'm referring to 911 calls, police reports, those documented incidents that you file during domestic cases. Mica files for a restraining order on March the 11th. She attaches multiple reports alleging harassment, stalking, and vehicle tampering. And what she was referring to is that she felt that she was being stalked, but she didn't have any proof. And one day she took her vehicle to get the oil changed, I believe a state inspection, and, just one of those common mechanic type of things. And the mechanic notices that a GPS has been placed on the vehicle, and he alerts Mica to this. And then that's when she even becomes more concerned. So she actually tries to get the restraining order on March the 11th. They get a bench trial on March 26th, and the case is dismissed without prejudice, and no restraining order is issued. And then divorce papers are served on April 25th, and she ends up taking her life on April 27th. So you start to see that, I believe, with the harassment that happened and the stalking that happened, she tries to go through the court system to get this restraining order. That fails. And I really think that she felt like she had no other choice but to commit suicide. On December 18th, the Justice Department released a press release where they said that, quote, a federal grand jury in Columbia, South Carolina, returned a 2-count indictment against John Paul Miller, 46, of Myrtle Beach, for cyberstalking and making false statements to federal investigators. The indictment alleges that beginning in November 2022, Miller sent unwanted, harassing communications to his estranged wife until her death on April 27, 2024. The harassing behavior included Miller posting a nude photo of the victim online without her consent, causing tracking devices to be placed on her vehicle, and in one instance, contacting her over 50 times in a single day. The indictment also alleges he interfered with her finances and her daily activities, and on one occasion damaged her vehicle tires. Federal investigators interviewed Miller about these allegations, and Miller lied in his responses. Miller said he did not damage the victim's tires, when in fact he purchased a tire deflation device online and sent messages to others regarding the victim's vehicle. Miller faces a maximum penalty of 5 years in prison for cyberstalking and 2 years in prison for his false statements. He also faces a fine of up to $250,000. His arraignment is scheduled for January 12, 2026, in federal court in Florence. The case was investigated by the FBI Columbia Field Office, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, the Myrtle Beach Police Department, the Horny County Police Department, the Horny County Sheriff's Department, and the Robeson County, North Carolina Sheriff's Office. Assistant U.S. Attorneys Ella Klein and Katie Stroton are prosecuting the case. So what this really means is that the rumors that J.P. Miller stalked Mica, that he took over her Facebook accounts and started to post inappropriate things, as the indictment said, as well as even going as far as deflating her tires. And this really shows just how stupid he is, because he did this for decades. This wasn't a one-time thing where he got mad at her and lashed out. This is someone that has had an obsession with her since she was 10 years old. And sounds cliche, and maybe it is, but it's a classic example of, if he couldn't have her, no one else will. And he made it his life mission to ruin her life. And the amount of stress that that caused on Mica and her family was overwhelming enough where she felt that it was best to take her own life. Just by looking at the news brief, we know that the feds have a lot of evidence in this case. And to be clear, too, The difference between charging someone federal and a local agency charging them with state charges is night and day. When you are a local police officer or sheriff's officer or a member of the highway patrol, when you have probable cause to arrest someone on either a misdemeanor or a felony, you can take them into custody. You can go down to a magistrate's office. Or if you don't have them in custody, you can go down to a magistrate's office and you can apply for an arrest warrant. And on that day, you explain to the magistrate of why you believe the person has committed the crime. And the magistrate would review the information and then make a decision right on the spot whether to issue a warrant for arrest for that person. With federal court, it's a very long process, which is why this has taken so long. When federal agents want to charge someone, they have to go to a U.S. attorney, and you have a conference with the U.S. attorney. The U.S. attorney reviews the case, and then the U.S. attorney has to actually decide if they are going to charge the case or not. U.S. attorneys are very selective on the cases that they take. And so what they will do is if they see that there's a hole in the case or something that needs to be answered, then they would send that back with the agent or the agency and make sure those questions are answered before they actually pursue charges. And so when I see stuff like this of they know that he purchased a tire deflation device and they know that he had communications about that tire deflation device with other people, and he lied about that. Those are times when, it's not going to work out very well for you. It's like when you get caught in the kitchen with a cookie and you're a kid and your mom asks, if you took a cookie and she already knows that there's supposed to be 10 cookies in there and there's only 8. She knows you took the 2 cookies. And I'm sure that when they met with him that day, they already knew every single answer that they asked. It was not a fact-finding mission. And so the other thing that they've alluded to is the nude photo that he sent. I think it's very common knowledge that social media, it's common knowledge, but I'll say it anyway. Okay. This isn't giving up any secrets or hurting any law enforcement investigation to say this, that if you put something on social media, even if you think you deleted it, it's not deleted. Facebook, Meta, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, TikTok, they're all saving that data. And when law enforcement gets a search warrant, they're going to get what you've sent. And it's also very hard to actually clear something from his phone. And I'm sure that that's one of the things that they probably searched, as well as her phone, because that should have been put into evidence when she took her life. So I say all that to say this. I don't think that there's a chance in hell that JP is getting off of this. Most likely, his best chance is to take a deal. But there's really no point in the U.S. Attorney's Office of offering him one. So hopefully he does do the 7 years. I think that this case does bring to mind of why it's so important for states to include South Carolina and really all states, because this is a national issue, that they need to go back and look at their laws in relation to stalking and cyber stalking. And this case is really an extreme about how you don't have to punch someone in the face to abuse them. Even though that there's alleged physical abuse as well during this case. I think the vast majority of it was the mind games and the ability of JP to be able to control Mica's life without any type of face-to-face conversation. And I think in a way that's even more damning. Because dealing with a physical threat, there's always a solution. You can buy a dog. You can buy a handgun. You can go to a self-defense class. You can get bear mace. But how do you handle that as opposed to people destroying your reputation? Controlling your social media. Having to tell your friends that this really isn't you that's posting things. And I'm sure that the majority of the things posted were not nude photos, which probably made it seem more credible that it was Mica and made her look crazy to people. And consequently, that's what actually drove her to have to go to a mental health hospital to get help. And instead of being a decent human being when she was in the mental hospital and thinking about how he can help her or support her, he goes and steals her car. But the problem is that, kind of like in North Carolina, like I am, they were not legally divorced yet. And so what the police said is that it was community property and he had every right to take her car. I can't think of how helpless she must feel when her reputation has been stripped of her. She was physically abused. And she was abused by the person who groomed her ever since she was 10 years old. Again, she was 10, he was 27 at the time. But he was able to hide that behind the church that he had. I think that everyone has their breaking point, and I don't see of how JP Miller saw the spiral and just continued to do it. I mean, stealing the car, calling her 50 times in a day. I hope the court takes all of this into consideration, and even though they cannot charge her, even though the court cannot charge JP Miller with murder, because they've got to go by, what statutes he broke. I sincerely hope that they show no mercy on him, that no deal is given. I hope he gets every single day that he is legally allowed to get. And then let's all hope that the prison that he goes to is absolute hell for him. I hope that this indictment gives Mica's family and friends some type of peace and closure. To Mica and her family and friends, I'm sorry for your loss. I think that it's important that we continue to talk about Mica, and I think that the best way to honor her is to continue to tell her story. And even though we can't save her life, maybe this case will save the life of someone else that's going through similar circumstances. And to JP, I hope that you receive the justice that you deserve. And I really hope that come January 12th, no mercy is shown on you. Thank you for watching Santana True Crime.